Welcome back to this special Vote 2010 edition of News 12's Newsmakers. I'm Janine Rose, along with Brian Conybeare. Today, we were hoping to bring you a face-to-face debate between Democratic U.S. Senator Kirsten Gillibrand and her Republican challenger, Joe DeAguardi. But Senator Gillibrand chose not to join the News 12 network for a debate, and that's why we are sitting down today with the former congressman from Ossining for this entire half hour to allow our viewers to hear his views on the major issues facing the voters. Mr. DeAguardi, again, we thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
Want to get to the issue of health care. The health care reform bill was passed, but again, if you talk to the American people, a lot of, almost 80% felt that the bill as passed was not the right thing for America. There's talk now of repealing that. A, will a repeal happen? And B, if you're elected, do you vote to repeal? What's the deal?
I would definitely vote to repeal and restructure. We do need health care reform, but we don't need a bill where the government is in too much in control, number one. And that tends to be the way, the hallmark of the Obama administration, Kirsten Gillibrand and Chuck Schumer. They want the government to be in control. The other thing is it didn't reduce the cost of health care. If they wanted Republicans at the table, they would have to step on the third rail for the Democrats, which is tort reform. And why isn't that happening? You've got 57 lawyers in the Senate out of 100. You've got, when I left, 286. I know there are over 250 today in the House. You've got this legal profession, which is a very big special interest group feeding money in. So as a result, we have doctors today performing tests that they don't really need. It's called defensive medicine. And some of them are expensive, MRIs, because they're afraid. They turn on their TVs as you do, and they see law firms. Did you get into an accident? Was it a year ago? Do you still have pain? Did you trip? So I'm not saying that you don't give what they call economic damages. If you lose an arm or a leg, there are ways to compute what that's worth. But then they always add the pain and suffering on top. That has to be limited to $250,000. But prevention. Not enough in this bill on prevention. We need to tell the people, as we did with cigarette smoking, that they have a choice and they have a responsibility to do the right thing. Now, we don't want them all to be marathon runners, but you have to do some exercise. There's something about stress reduction and yoga. There's something about understanding what chiropractors do, acupuncturists do, and nutrition. Look at type 2 diabetes. And the biggest problem is childhood obesity. Hey, type 2 diabetes is one of the most costly things today. What are they doing?
Can the government do anything about those things?
Well, what they can do is listen, you can't legislate everything. You've got to educate Americans. Without information, they have no choices. Didn't we do it with cigarette smoking? I think we did a very good job, 20 or 30 years. Even the kids today, they see their parents smoking, would say, Dad, Mom, that's not good. So you've got to deal with that. Look at type 2 diabetes. The medical profession will wait until someone has to amputate toes and fingers and feet, rather than say in the beginning, you know, you need to take off 40 pounds, you need to do something, because then your quality of life will be better and you'll stay well and it'll cost less. That's not being done. There's kind of a little bit of something being done on prevention.
But Mr. DeAguardi, given what we saw to get this original bill passed, if the bill is repealed, would it take, again, months or years for Congress, particularly if we don't see a majority or we see a Republican majority, Democratic House, etc., would it take years again to get something passed?
I hope not. But, you know, there's so much uncertainty today. Until November 2nd comes, this Tuesday, we're not going to know whether this is a real political revolution or just maybe a slight tweaking. My feeling is, in New York State, it is a political revolution. The Tea Party people are not just a structured party. They're people who are Republicans, independents, conservatives, taxpayer party, and they are really upset, really angry. And they've used that vehicle to express that anger. And look at the primary. I mean, 3 times more came out in my primary than did when Spencer ran against Hillary Clinton. So it shows you that they want to get engaged. I think you're going to see that and more on the 2nd in all these races.
Let me hit you on some other issues that you may have to tackle if you get into the Senate, and one of the most difficult is immigration reform. Where do you stand on that? Should there be a path to citizenship for people who are here illegally?
First of all, let's get to what the federal government has failed at, shutting down the borders. It's not just people who are coming here, it's drugs. Look at the problem we have in Mexico today. I mean, it's sad to see the massacres and whatnot, and why we can't deal with that is beyond me. But look at Arizona. If a state sees that the federal government is not doing its job, they have the right to do what they want to do. Now, you talk about what should we do in the meantime with immigration. Obviously, you can't deport 12 million people. and you got to be humane about it. But if people commit horrendous crimes, they need to be, the laws have to be enforced. My feeling is we need to reboot the whole immigration system. My father came here in '29, my mother earlier, as legal immigrants. The preference system is not working. So many people are online these days. And originally, the people who came from certain countries can no longer come because they can't trace immediate relatives, mothers and fathers. But the ones who can, they're even on silos that are so much online, it's not really working. You need to increase dramatically the number of legal visas. We need to refresh this country. There are jobs here that people don't want. Why not bring in people who are hungry for those jobs, and hopefully we'll bring in some PhDs as well. Would you believe two-thirds, what is it? Yeah, two-thirds of the PhDs that are educated here leave to go back. And we kind of accelerate that. Why aren't we encouraging them to stay?
Chinese immigrants, Indian folks
Right.
like that.
I mean, these are the people who will create things, and that results in manufacturing. Look at Silicon Valley. I've used that as an example for New York. They attracted many, many PhDs there. And by the way, 1/3 of it is boarded up right now. But we have the chance to do that. But you need a collaborative effort with industry, the investment community, government, and academia. And there's a report that was put out by the governor, signed by the president of Cornell University, that said, New York Task Force on diversifying New York's economy through collaboration, as I just said. That was December 14th. My wife found it on the internet. Not being advertised, not being implemented. You know, what's wrong with New York? The Empire State. We're going to just sit here as everything goes to pot? And that's what we're doing. You have a dysfunctional government in Albany, and God willing, for the right reason, we have at least a Republican Senate. Because you can't have one party controlling everything without arrogance. Then you have corruption. You had Alan Hevesi. And look at Kirsten Gillibrand saying that he should not go to jail. Come on. This is not
in
trial.
fairness, you
It
got
was
Joe
conviction.
Bruno, too, so it isn't just the
But
Democrats.
he went.
Right.
Yes.
He went to jail. I mean, obviously, I'm not saying it's just Republicans, but arrogance leads to corruption, and that has to be changed. And it's the same problem in Washington. One parties don't work.
Couple quick issues. The pro-choice activists are saying that you are bad for women, bad for New York. Where do you stand on abortion?
Nonsense. Listen, I have a very progressive Jesuit education. The Marines of the Catholic Church are the Jesuits. I have it for 8 years, Fordham Prep, Fordham University. Why do you think I'm a human rights activist? Why do you think I'm an environmentalist? I'm the one who started the Hudson River Caucus with Bob Torricelli, Long Island. That wasn't Nita Lowey. That was Joe Diaguardi, and the Hudson River and the Long Island Sound Caucus with Bruce Morrison. And what I did for the Albanian people to save them from genocide. I believe in the worth of every human being. I believe that people need to be helped to fulfill their potential as human beings. I don't care if they're same sex. I don't care what their race is, their gender, their ethnicity. That's the way I believe.
So would you vote to overturn Roe v. Wade if it came to that in the Senate?
First of all, let's talk about the exceptions. Why would I not allow an exception in a traumatic situation, rape, incest, or the potential death of a mother? That's a case where you have to give the benefit of the doubt to the conscience of the mother. And I've been for that. And that's been confused with funding. I'm a fiscal conservative. If they try to use money for any abortions, then I'm against it. Okay? Roe versus Wade, that is something that has to be revisited. As many of our laws in the United States have been revisited, whether they be the laws on, you know, in the 19th century for black Americans and women's rights and all, we've had laws that were no good. This one has to be revisited at some point.
How about gays in the military? Don't ask, don't tell. That's been huge lately. Where do you stand on that?
Right.
Should gays be allowed to serve openly in the U.S. military?
And I want gay people to know that I'm very comfortable in seeing them fulfill their potential in anything that they want to do. The issue there, to me, is the military feels there may be a situation with the structured military where this could be a security issue. Let these generals come out with a consensus, and whatever that consensus is, you see how fast it is that I will vote on it. Now, gay marriages. Would I use the word marriage? No. But would I encourage, you know, the issue of contractual benefits, the issue of committed relationships on the same sex? Would I encourage them to have the same kind of security that other couples would have? Obviously. But as a traditionalist, I would not use the word marriage.
We're quickly running out of time, but I would ask you, a lot of people, as we mentioned earlier, are in trouble financially, fiscally, foreclosures.
Big time.
Big time. If you get to Congress, what would you do to help the average American?
Well, number one, you got to loosen up the money from the banks. You got to get that money out there. It wasn't meant to be invested so their earnings per share would go up. Number two, you got to change some of the accounting rules. I found out reading an article lately that the banks would not rather get involved in a short sale than foreclose. Why? Because if they have a short sale, believe it or not, they have to recognize the loss immediately. On a foreclosure, they take the property, they keep it on the books at the original value. Well, this is what Japan did for 10 years, and look at Japan. Read that story in the New York Times a week ago. Front page, Japan. Dispirited, lack of confidence, not spending, not borrowing. This could happen to us. We got to avoid that iceberg.
Real fast, very last question. Why should people vote for Joe DiAguardi and not Kirsten Gillibrand?
20 seconds.
Joe DiAguardi has worked for everything he has. He knows the American dream. He was part of that American dream. He wants to pass it on, and I want to help the next generation avoid this iceberg, which is $63 trillion in debt.
All right, on that note, Joe DiAguardi, we thank you for being with us. Good to have you, and we'll be watching the developments on Election Day.
Thank you, Janine.
Good to have you here. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. That's all the time we have for this edition of News 12's Newsmakers. Don't forget our special Vote 2010 Election Night coverage starting at 9 p.m. when the polls close.
We'll see you then.